let's look at gold dealership firm Menzgold. Is it an exposure of regulation in this country, or the regulators are not being innovative, or clearly there were issues with this scheme and that was all?
It was just a very bold effort at Piram.
I mean, really?
Just a bold, I mean, the guys came out very bold, but at the end of the day, it boiled down to a Piram scheme.
But
look,
this is a failure
George,
again on
George,
regulation.
George. Oh, but you agree it was a Piram scheme, right?
I mean, well,
You agree, first of all. Not could be, it's obvious. Now, it has been as obvious as daylight. There was a Piram scheme. Now, where the failure of regulation came was that the regulators knew it was a Piram scheme.
so why didn't they stop it at the initial stage?
Exactly. So the question is, was it because the laws were not in place?
Coming from
or what?
R5,
Because
Piram,
Bank of
DKM.
Ghana has been taking on these guys for years, and the guys boldly been telling Bank of Ghana to go to hell. To the extent that Bank of Ghana now scurries back and goes to call SEC. That pay come and help us, so we can't control these guys. So SEC now has to now come.
There were Minerals Commission, and at a point in time, let me share my personal experience in trying to even get all those regulators that matter to tell me, give me the clear line what is happening. Everybody was like, why are you worried, putting pressure on us? And that was where my problem said, okay, if these guys are indeed operating a pyramid scheme or whatever, speak, tell me. And everybody was.
But it was complicated, George. You
Why
had
was it
celebrities coming out to come and support.
Isn't it a failure on those who are supposed to protect us, you and I?
The regulatory
The people did not want to be protected. That was part of the problem. The people you are trying to protect were now pointing fingers at the regulators and saying the regulators are preventing them from making money. I mean, we all saw what happened when the so-called celebrities were coming out. I hope those guys, they've lost all their money. Because it's
so this is how I see it. I think that they might have found a space in terms of the regulatory environment that they decided to take advantage of.
But they said it openly. That was the situation.
And when you look at it critically, you will see that the way the financial market is segmented by way of regulation, it is possible to identify regulatory arbitrage in the system. Sandwich between Bank of Ghana and Securities and Exchange Commission.
Deposit versus investment.
And all
there
of
was
that.
a regulators forum.
Well, no, we don't have it as strong as what we have in others. I know currently there's something going on at the Ministry of Finance in terms of harmonizing to address these regulatory gaps and all of that. But don't forget, in this country, things just don't happen accidentally. It is possible that behind the scenes there were very powerful people behind this Menzgold, for which reason it was very difficult for a single regulator to actually move in quite strongly and do what has to be done.
George.
Don't rule that out. What you saw playing out in the banking industry with how some people were able to get banking licenses even without all the money and all of that, don't be surprised. The only thing that perhaps we say we can't do is to get God's signature in this country and all of that immediately and
So
do
we
whatever we want
can
to
create
do.
everything. Just like one person said that Kwame Nkrumah would have done everything with the exception of creation of a man and a woman. So powerful.
And all of that. So, you see, we have a problem. And the problem also is that, you see, it's not sufficient to blame it on regulation. You know, if you look at some of the people who we have heard have invested in Menzgold and all of that, you realize that we are just driven also by greed. You can't take that out.
Oh, yeah.
I'm surprised that when all these things were going on, you had banks that said that were invested there, people who took actually fixed deposits to invest in this institution.
I don't think that it would be good for us to even call them investors. I wouldn't go strongly along the line that people were staking lotto with their money. With that kind of return and all of that, I mean, you could not be considered to be an investor. The average investor is known to be risk averse, largely risk averse and all of that. But they were just taking excessive risk, and this is exactly what has happened, and this is what they have asked for. The level of financial literacy is also low. Having the knowledge and in itself, but having the knowledge is one thing, and being transformed.
On what you define as knowledge, because again,
I'm coming. Financial literacy
shows that these are
financial
people
literacy
who play in the financial space.
I'm coming. Financial literacy has two components. There's one, the knowledge, and being transformed by that knowledge.
So accountants, bankers.
Do you know something? You may be the
you tell us.
You may be
very,
very
from the banks and the
that is fine. You see, the point is that it comes to date. very basic in terms of investment diversification, that you could hear that somebody will put all that he had in Menzgold. Certainly, clearly. What is that supposed to tell you? And all of that. So I think that you can see in terms of regulation, we haven't done quite well. It's also playing out in there. You can also see the individual customers in terms of their posture and all of that. Look, you want to place money with a certain company. You want to do certain basic due diligence.
No, but that was,
and
see,
and all of that.
That's where the issue was.
Yeah, and these people were okay. They were okay largely because why? It doesn't matter the underlying asset. It doesn't matter whether they were being regulated or not, and all of that.
Who knew what it was?
So we just kept going and going and going. But you see, of course, the political economy fine, the interconnectedness and all of that. You find
what
it
he has said,
all over.
is the precise issue. The issue is this: look, everybody has a right to take whatever risk he wants to take concerning how he spends his money. All right? We know that there's a correlation between risk and reward. Some people want to be very, very conservative to just invest in treasury bills. Some guys will take all kinds of risks. But the issue is this: one thing that regulation must ensure is that the investor must be given the requisite information to be able to judge the amount of risk he is taking. At the point where Menzgold refused to divulge its business model, that was the time that they should have been closed down.
And
because how can you have an institution taking
institution
investment from the public and refuses to tell the public how it's making those
they said they were doing good trading. Have we
but they now said, okay, when Bank of Ghana said explain exactly how it, and SEC said, okay, how does it work? They said no, it's a trade secret.
So that's the issue.
At that stage, they should have barred them from doing anything.
One key requirement for the market to be efficient is that every financial market participant ought to meet some minimum financial literacy standard. It's very, very important. And you see, Menzgold would have responded to whatever pressure that was coming from their own customers. If they are asking whether you are regulated, why won't you submit to this and all of that, they will. The point was that they had an incentive to do all these things, and that is what has happened. And the whether you are risk-averse chicken or you are venturesome lion, you are taking risk with your money.
Is the chapter closed or not on this Menzgold issue? Because there are still customers who are demanding their money.
I think
we've still not heard from the company.
The owners, they should be forced to sell their assets and pay back.
That's what let's rate, because I am still not clear about what is next on this Menzgold issue.
So what are we rating? I think the regulatory this,
let's first look at the regulatory actions of it. I thought that it could have been handled better than what has been done.
They did the right thing,
but too late. Why didn't they come in earlier to take action on the Menzgold issue? And therefore, I'm still watching that space in terms of what the regulators would do and how would those investors get their monies back and what is going to happen to that company going forward. So I'm still watching that space.
I'm also watching that space.
I give them the thumbs up, the regulators, because they were fighting against the masses. And look, even in the newspaper where I was, one of my reporters wrote this long feature defending Menzgold and blaming Bank of Ghana for preventing people from earning very good returns on their money. A reporter in the place, and honestly, at that stage, I would, if I had my, I would have sacked it.
For people took an ignorant position on these things. Which was not.
Imagine a financial journalist working on me was insisting that Menzgold was genuine, and Bank of Ghana, for some political reason or the other, was trying to prevent people from making money.
We were envying the returns that
were getting. Exactly.
And for me, I thought that people draw the line between an individual doing his work, being an indigent, fine, and also ensuring that we have the rules of the game. And if you want to play in that space, let's abide by the rules. Clear. So anybody who sought, or some of us who commented on this issue, wasn't because we are trying to kill a local business. No. It was about the fact that when it came to that space, there were rules. And if you want to play in that space, abide by the rules clearly.
In fact, the reason we came in at some point in time, for me, was the fact that it was too risky for a business to say, we don't want to be regulated. Look, submitting to regulation is a sound business strategy to have in the first place.
They even refuse to divulge their business
because
model.
you needed to explain the underlying.
How they use the money, they refuse to say.
For instance, we are asking for a certain level of intervention from the government. How do we expect the government to come in now? To assume the liabilities or what? I think
but the Bank of Ghana don't want everybody not to invest in the place. Anybody
there has been sufficient information.
But finally, have we learned our lessons? Because I remember Piram, I remember I've forgotten the other name, DKM,
we have
and all the rest.
Have we learned our lessons? We're not allowed.
Still, it will come back again.
It will come back again.
Okay, let's move on. We'll be doing the CD as well, but let's come to another critical issue as well. One district, one factory, one constituency, whatever you can talk about, all those things. Let's look at how you rate this initiative by government and whether it's being implemented very well. The fact that we want to move into an industrialized economy and ensure that these factories are established at strategic locations and we have a plan to ensure that we produce what we consume, I think it's a good initiative. I would give it a gold on that one. But I still have issues with how we are fine-tuning the whole policy to ensure that we really benefit from this as an economy. So gold on that one. Gold.
Like, I'm the odd one.
Okay.
But I'm sure it's issues with implementation, not the concept.
That is where my question. When it comes to the
sustainability.
The laws, we have one of the final laws.
And sustainability.
Again, yeah.
And I can see that government is refining its approach gradually and all of that in terms of inviting in the private sector and all of that. I think that's the way. When was the last time Ghana government really managed something so successful over a certain period of time? Those are the issues. And I think that we have to be able to allow the market, the investors and all of that to come in. Government should create the necessary
we'll be looking at the connection again of this important with the Ghana city as well, and maybe it might be a good time to try and look at this as well, just quickly on the Ghana city and the connection, because it looks like we won't get away from this space as in the flip-flop with the Ghana city, and this whole thing about even hitting 5 city, Bank of Ghana will come in and all the rest. We look at the numbers and sometimes people would want to question these numbers, because if at the macro level everything is good, inflation is stable, our exports are good, why is it not impacting on the local currency?
Simple, because we have relied too much on external investors for our financing. As Prof pointed out, look, for the first time, we've had I think 9 consecutive, since the last quarter of 2016, we've had a trade surplus, a merchandise trade surplus, consecutively since the last quarter of 2016. So that is a positive, which means the city should be appreciated. But the services thing is good.
I remember when some would say, and I don't know about the chi, that inflation is BD. If inflation is coming down, if inflation is stabilizing,
so John, let me explain what's going on.
The cost of credit.
What is going on?
I want that to impact on my pocket.
What is going on is simply that there's capital flight. We've relied on foreign investment for our no, I'm not about direct foreign investment. I'm talking about portfolio investment. All right, especially for government's debt. All right, to the extent that 1/3 of what you call your domestic debt is actually foreign debt.
Let me just get Prof. Popkin just a few minutes and let's move on the whole thing about the Ghana city and how we ensure that the stability is sustained. Just a few minutes on that one.
I think that it could have been worse, but I think that we also have to acknowledge government strategy and also the central bank, what they've done. If you look at it relative to maybe what has happened in the time past and all of that, you can see that it's not that bad. Because look, even if we did everything right, we still expect that the cedi will depreciate by a certain percentage annually to correct for in terms of the relative size of our economy and the major country economics that we trade with and all of the inflation differentials, interest rate differentials and all of that. Those things are still there. So I think that it's not the worst scenario for us going forward. And then again, it comes to in terms of the excessive foreign dominance in our economy. That also is not helping. We are hugely import dependent, whether we like it or not. I mean, but of course we are thinking about planting for food and jobs. That should also help and all of that. We are still importing hugely and all of that. In fact, studies have shown that more than 70% of business input costs in this country is imported. That's very huge. The debt management strategy that we have also implemented, he talked about in the last couple of years, even though we've done more domestic issuance, we've opened it up to foreign investors through the book building process. That itself is also playing out. And then you expect that as the U.S. economy is strengthening and securities are becoming a little bit more attractive in those countries,
rates are going up.
There are investors that are seeking early redemption of their investment in CD-denominated assets here, and as they are exiting, even though it's CD-denominated, when they are exiting, they will need dollars to go. And our market is so shallow. A $20 million request can change the market price. So it's not that deep.
So let's hope and see what will happen next year. Let's come to the creation of these news districts as well, and the regions, sorry, and the implications on the one district, one factory. Don't worry, and the implications of this one on the economy as well.
Well, I think that we were here and trying to say that the people, we don't need it. But the results from the referendum actually suggest that this is what the people are asking for. If you look at the overwhelming support for the creation of those regions. And I think that is what development is also about, because what you may call development here may be different from how the local people see it. And all of that, that is very, very important. I think that in the immediate, they are likely to see certain things called development in terms of administrative structures for these new regions, regional capital, coordinating centers, and all of that. Of course, there will be some local jobs for some of the local people and all of that. It also opens up the country in terms of for internal tourism and all of that. But of course, it's going to come at a cost. And others have argued whether this is whether it's worth it and all of that. But I think that given the fact that we have embraced democracy and we should be able to respect people's views and what they want for themselves, and the fact that per our own constitution or so, is the people that are affected that should decide. And they have decided that this is what they want.
Let's try and iterate about this whole decision and its economic implications, creation of new regions. What will be your rating on it as well?
I will still do my I
am still watching and looking at the
George, the fact is that the closer the seat of government is in a region to the people, the more the government will be sensitive to the
isn't there a failure
of the people
and decentralization, because irrespective of where you are,
this is also part of decentralization.
It's part of
we are moving to the next phase of the decentralization where we are going to elect.
Now, if water is the immediate problem, the people in the northern part of the western region, for example, they are more likely to get water than to get something which was of less importance to them.
Even though it's very difficult to link these creations and this to poverty reduction and all of that, even in terms of theory and empirical evidence and all of that. I think that it's a decision that the people have made, that they want these regions and all of that. Let's respect them. That's what
99%. We can't begrudge them. I mean,
we can't sit here and decide for them. The people who need to decide for themselves have decided for themselves.
The pot is becoming a real playground for governments when they come. There's now a new thing, Unipass as well. Let's rate it as well. What do you
Unipass?
All other things being equal, it would take off from next year. I find it very interesting. If all the other stakeholders and what they are saying is anything to go by, I'm still watching that space.
Not here, because I haven't followed it fully. There isn't sufficient argument for and against and all of that, and for that reason, it's very difficult for me.
That's why I'm against it. That's why I'm against it. I just don't see. Nobody has been able to tell me one single reason why single window should replace with Unipass. That's my issue.
Let's take a short, quick break, and we'll be right back as we try and on our review for the year 2018.